start with the first agenda item again.
Yep. So first item up is the approval of last month's minutes. The only item I believe that we voted on was the dockless scooter program. Otherwise, there was discussion on the Washington and Scott Boulevard project. It looks good to me. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
Thank you. I think Ben.
Ben.
Let's see. So we actually have at least, I don't know, a couple potential additions to the agenda that weren't initially listed. Our bylaws state that we must have officer elections and make plans for next year at our annual meeting, which is the last meeting of the calendar year, which is today. Obviously, that's very short notice for both of those, but my understanding of the bylaws would require that we do the elections anyway. Apologies to everybody, unless Kathy has.
Were the elections posted on the agenda?
They weren't.
They were not.
If they weren't noticed, you really shouldn't do them. No, sorry. Bylaws,
So
you should really, that's an item that really does need to be noticed.
yes, I agree. How does that fit with the bylaws?
I mean, it's not ideal, but it's not against the law to ignore your bylaws. If someone wants to get a bee in their bonnet about you doing elections, I mean, not that, you know what I mean? It's not like someone's gonna go to jail or anything, but technically it would be against the law to hold the elections without notice. And
Sure.
just
Okay. So just if everybody, so based on that, I think if everybody's okay with that, we can hold. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Also, as a practical matter, if you guys aren't ready to have elections, it's probably not a good idea to have them. I mean, choosing your leadership for the next year should be something that you put a little bit more thought into. It shouldn't be like, oh, let's just pick you because you're sitting here kind of thing. Just that's a practical aside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was, I think, an oversight to not realize that it was in the bylaws sooner. So I think I would like to hold them until the January meeting. I'm open to discussion if others feel differently. We can include the 2024 planning in that too. That's also in the bylaws, but.
I think considering that we didn't, realize it, I think it's better to wait until January.
I've put it in new business so we don't forget for next time.
Cool. Hearing no objections, we will hold elections and planning for 2024 at our January meeting next month. I guess since we have guests, we'll just get to the first item quickly. We have a discussion and a letter of support related to a bike lane on Kinnickinnick Avenue, south of Maple, the northbound bike lane specifically. I think Scott is here. I also think I saw Kevin Muse join as well. So if you want to share some background on it, Scott, that would be awesome.
Sure. Good morning.
You want me to share it again? Let me know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Scott Reinbacher. I'm with the Department of Public Works Traffic Engineering Unit. So thank you for having me today. It's nice to virtually meet you all. So just a little bit of background information. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the KK River Trail, which serves as the main cycling route really between downtown and Bayview. So the trail can be accessed via the east leg of East Maple Street there at Kinnickinnick Avenue. So there are on-street bike lanes present along Kinnickinnick Avenue south of Maple Street in both directions. No bike lanes north of Maple Street right now. So historically, there were two segments between Maple and Bay and Beecher Street, which I'm sure everyone's aware of, that had gaps in the on-street bike lane network. The first segment, as Mitch alluded to, was in the northbound bike lane, essentially adjacent to I think it's composed of 3 parcels that Kate is pointing to, which spans about 330 feet, whereas you may be able to see there's no northbound bike lane on the aerial imagery there. So previously, this space was used for on-street parking and loading zone operations for the abutting properties. There's also another segment between Maple, Beecher, and Bay Street on the south leg in the southbound lanes, which many of you may, I'm sure those who have ridden the facility have noticed. It's essentially south of the Kinnickinnic River, between, the south end of the bridge abutment there. And essentially it reconnects underneath the railroad bridge. Similarly, this small segment here, instead of the bike lanes, the space was provided for on-street parking for the adjacent business as well. And then, of course, the bike lane picks up via buffered bike lane, essentially at the BP gas station there, and then connects into the bike facilities along Bay and Beecher, as well as along Kinnickinnic Avenue. So we in DPW, we've been aware of these 2 gap segments and received feedback for quite a while now. It was, I believe, last February timeframe. I think, Mitch, you were one of the leading proponents who kind of raised your hand looking for better solution out here to address these 2 gaps in the bike network. So as of last winter, we, through some consultation and public outreach with the abutting property owners, we implemented a very temporary solution out there to essentially install temporary no parking signs along these 2 gap segments, just to keep that space free and clear of any vehicles that may be parked out there. This was intended to be just a very temporary solution, or essentially a test trial, if you will, to see if we in DPW received any negative feedback. And also, of course, to make sure that the abutting properties did not have any detrimental effects to business. So everything was fine and dandy along the segment here until this fall this year, when we in DPW, we started receiving complaints from the adjacent properties on the northbound segment here, which is back on the screen again. Apparently there were concerns that they needed on-street parking to facilitate their business operations, things like that. So after a little bit of back and forth, I guess the temporary no parking signs ended up being removed until last week. So again, we in DPW, we've been aware of some of these challenges along this segment. Last week, actually, well, this was actually about 2 weeks ago. We in DPW, we've always had a real kind of a backup solution, an interim solution, if you will, in our back pocket out here. We essentially, luckily, one of our area contractors had a little bit of availability last year before they have essentially stopped striping within the city. Of course, weather needs to be favorable for us in order to paint, or in this case, use epoxy to install bike lane facilities in the city. We did find out our contractor had some availability last week, Thursday. So essentially, we restriped Kinnickinnic Avenue. For those of you that don't know, we've completely addressed through just a typical on-street bike lane. The southbound lane is now, we installed a painted edge line. essentially kept the bike lane adjacent to the curb for the southbound direction there, south of the river, adjacent to BP. And then similarly, we restriped the northbound lane here between essentially the south side of the screen right now to keep essentially the bike lane adjacent to the curb for most of the segment. However, to find a solution for the businesses, we did provide approximately 80 to 85 feet of on-street parking essentially adjacent to the business. So during this 85-foot segment, bikes will need to shift to the west essentially, as is typical in the city, where bikes will essentially drive between the parking lane and regular vehicular traffic. So I guess that's sort of where we're at right now. Again, this was really a quick, very temporary solution to just finish the striping changes out there until more permanent treatments can be pursued, whether that's next year and future years, et cetera. I guess that's really where we're looking for feedback from everyone on the committee here. What are things we can do better out here? What is feedback? What are y'all seeing out there? Et cetera. So I guess that's where we're at right now. If you guys would like to open this up to discussion.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I think it would be good to have some discussion here. I think and it's open to any committee members. If you have questions, please raise your hand. But one of the questions I had was you mentioned a loading zone. Is it signed as a loading zone now, the new parking?
Now it is not a loading zone. Currently, the segment, so if you zoom in maybe a tad there, Kate, how about we start from the south side. So right now you can see there's a little abutting driveway here. Yeah, essentially a long curb cut there. Of course, everything to the south of this driveway is a no parking anytime regulation because the bike lanes are directly adjacent to the curb. So right now, as of last week, the first 85 feet approximately north of the driveway, this is where we created on-street parking. It's unmetered parking, no loading zone right now. So the first 85 feet essentially is where the on-street parking is. It's a little bit hard to see on this aerial. There's a little dot right about there. That's a fire hydrant. So right now, of course, per city ordinance, no one can park within 10 feet of a fire hydrant. So basically about 10 feet south of this hydrant is where we ended the on-street parking. So everything north of that point is no parking anytime to the north. So there are no more loading zones out here. It's just a no parking anytime zone. There's also, I think there's one curb cut for the driveway. There's a garage, I think, in that middle parcel here.
Yes.
Of course, you can't block a driveway. So that's another reason why no parking anytime to the north there.
And I think at least looking at the city parcel map, the southern two buildings are what look like two buildings is one parcel. So I guess you said it was 80 to 85 feet. How many parking spots is that? 1, 2?
I'd say I guess it depends on the manner, the way the vehicles are parked. And then of course, if it's a passenger vehicle or a truck, normally for passenger vehicles, we assume about 20, 25 feet per parking spot. So I'd say you can get maybe 3 solid parking spots in there, hopefully.
If everybody's polite and pulls up to the front and rear.
Yeah, it doesn't always.
Yes. Thank you. And I guess I did want to say too that I think this is a significant improvement over the previous prior to the temporary no parking that was added this year. This is a very important bike route for a lot of people coming from the south side, going north and vice versa. I did take some pictures, so I'm going to try if I can share my screen briefly. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try. Can you see?
Yes.
My screen?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what it looks like now. And this is, I think, the segment that you're describing, north, looking south, but north of the first driveway to this. And I think the fire hydrant is basically right behind me in this picture.
Correct.
But
Yeah, so it's a little bit hard to see what looks like would be a parking lane. Yeah, this is maybe a better picture. So everything you're looking at now north of this hydrant is no parking anytime. So we essentially had to taper that bike lane back to the curb. So yeah, of course, many cyclists, myself included. A lot of times I'll just shift over and ride close to the curb in this scenario. While it may not be legal, I think everyone recognizes that's just how we ride out there. So that's kind of why there is that tapered shift all the way to the corner there.
Yeah, in hearing from the business, do you know if it was primarily for customer parking that they were looking for the on-street spaces, or employees, or something else?
It's my understanding they were trying to keep this space free primarily for customers. As you did note through past correspondence, Mitch, they do have that tiny driveway to the southern end, and then East Maple Street, there's like a loading dock and kind of some angled parking, if you will, along Maple Street.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, as the letter notes, like all of the businesses on this stretch do have their own off-street parking. And so I appreciate the significant improvement here. And I think it's kind of I don't know, maybe a more narrow potential improvement, but I think at least for me, I'm curious for other members, or if there's any members of the public that bike the stretch as well and have thoughts on kind of having to navigate this, because I think at least for me, for the past 8 months or whatever it is, just kind of riding straight up next to the curb was a welcome relief. And so I worry, I think also because the parking lane here is the minimum width allowed. Is that right? It's like 7 feet.
Yeah, it is narrow. So it's 7 feet.
And so I think that's similar to what was done with the Howell restriping, which is, in my experience there, is that you end up, especially with kind of newer or larger vehicles, they will hang over, especially their mirror, into the bike lane. And so that's where my concerns lie with this. But I think I've talked enough. I will, if any other committee members have thoughts or things they want to share.
Can you hear me? This is Jake Newborn. Can you hear me?
So, yes, sorry. I think we'll take committee members first.
Okay. I'm just on a phone. I can't see what's going on. So just holler.
I will. Yes, thank you. I'll make a note of it. Anna, you are muted.
There we go. Sorry, 3 years into this. Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation. I'm really happy to see that bike lane continuing southbound. I don't bike that stretch as often as Mitch does, but it's a pretty key route. I was wondering, so right now we have the bike lane kind of coming out and tapering back into the curb. I'm wondering if there's any possibility to make that flip-flop that with the parking. so that the bike lane stays continuous and the parking's further out in the street. I think that might help with some of the concerns around like if there is a wider vehicle there, right? It's not, you know, like if the space between the curb and the parking, like that's less likely to get like encroached on if the vehicle's too wide. Um, any thoughts on that? I assume it's probably like a space limitation.
Yeah, so the temporary solution that we implemented last week, yeah, correct. Right now, I forget exactly what the width of KK is. But right now, because we do have parking along the west side of the street, a bike lane along the west side of the street, and then we have a center left turn lane for the north and southbound directions. Right now, there wasn't enough space to implement a parking protected bike lane. But again, I think that's where the discussion comes, like moving forward as to how we might reimagine KK in general. You know, are those center left turn lanes needed, I guess, are to be seen. You know, are there parking lanes potentially needed along the other side of the street? I'm not sure, you know, there is other properties over there, but maybe they're currently not using the space. So again, I think that really opens the discussion, Anna. I mean, we've been trying to, where the space is available, implement, you know, parking protected bike lanes on a number of other projects in the city, and maybe that would be a possibility out here as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I think the thing jumping out at me, like when we're looking at the satellite imagery, is that there's a lot of off-street parking there. So I'm hoping as we move forward, like and think about the next step, you know, we're really critical about do we really need the on-street spots there? Thanks.
Ben?
Hi, thanks again for your presentation. I have to agree with Mitch. This is, I think, a significant improvement to what used to exist at this intersection in this area. But I have to ask that DPW strongly consider removing all parking there. I was almost killed exactly at that location last year. I'd be willing to bet, unfortunately, I don't want to take this bet, but I'd be willing to bet that I'm not the only person in this meeting today who has had a close call there and gotten pretty shaken up. Even a year later, it's hard to think about. I even got it on video. I had a GoPro on my bike, and I'd be unhappy to share that with anyone who would like to see it. But it's always in the forefront of my mind. And as someone who lives in Bayview and has to contend with these extra narrow bike lanes on KK and Howell, it's often not easy to get into or out of my own neighborhood. And the current, I think, arrangements on Kinnickinnick and Howell have definitely instigated some creative route planning in the area.
Yeah, and you know, thanks for sharing that feedback, Ben. Of course, it's you know, tragic to hear of the unfortunate incident you mentioned, which we see all too common throughout the city. When it comes to did we consider permanently removing the parking? I would say that we tried it out on a test trial. There was the adverse effects that the businesses experienced. Again, is, you know, I think more outreach needs to happen. Given that this was a real temporary interim solution, we figured that no, we did not feel comfortable removing all of the parking at this time. We really felt that this was a good compromise right now until we could get everyone on the same page by just providing that small segment of on-street parking. I guess we at DPW also felt that outside of the normal business hours of their facility, that I don't believe there usually is a lot of on-street parking out there. So again, you know, it was just a matter of, in this interim solution, we felt that, you know, it would be best for now to just continue to maintain that small segment of on-street parking, you know, from the 9 to 5 or whatever timeframes that people are there. And then outside of those hours and possibly on weekends or whatnot, that space would be clear. So, again, could we look at in the future? Absolutely. But I guess given the really rapid response to just go ahead and restrike these changes here before winter, we figured that this was best for now.
Could it be signed
For sure.
as like 1 or 2 hour, 9 to 5 weekday parking? Is that an option?
It could be an option. We didn't really feel that a timed restriction was needed right now.
Or even 9 to
but-
5, whatever.
Yeah. I guess that's an option. Usually we use our time restrictions just to kind of increase turnover in the area. Again, I don't know how long, their customers are parked out there. I would imagine it's pretty quick turnaround time as it is. So we didn't consider a timed restriction. It's just unsigned 24-hour parking right now.
The one question I wanted to ask quickly, because I think Kate, this is sort of adjacent to the KKRT connections. Was there any was there feedback on this stretch and the lack of bike lane, at least in the past? I know the feedback is no longer being collected, but if there's a brief notes or summary that you have.
I don't have any kind of summary with me. We definitely heard a lot of comments about crossing the street, as I'm sure anyone who is, myself included, tried to cross that street on your bike. It's pretty difficult. So we are hoping to put in a median there to help make it a little bit easier. You can cross at least halfway before going all the way across. So we're hopeful that will make it easier to get across. I think there were some comments about coming from the south. That's not being addressed in our project, but as Scott was saying, we are looking at this for a more permanent solution in the future.
Thank you.
Any discussion on like a rapid flashing beacon or some sort of pedestrian beacon at that crossing? And then my other question would be like a speed limit sign, the flashing ones put on the other side of the railroad bridge to get people to slow down as they're going through there possibly. Because I live right there, so I go through this every single day. And everybody's right. It is an intimidating intersection to get across. Kind of wondering, that's where people start getting their speed up, is coming off the bridge, going over the KK to go down underneath the other bridge for the trains. And then by the time they get over there to Maple, they're going 40 miles an hour.
Sure.
Just kind of.
Can speak to that.
Yeah.
So we were considering a rapid flashing beacon for the KK River Trail Connections project, but we decided to go with a median instead. We won't be doing that there. That's my one comment on that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought as well, Kate. Those are tools in the toolbox. I think we in DPW have been, we feel that a lot of, I guess we've been pursuing more so environmental changes, through means of, narrowing roadways, reducing the crossing distances of pedestrians. I think the installation of a median out there would probably be more effective than the rapid flashing beacon, just because you are, reducing exposure within the roadway, pedestrians, cyclists, whoever, they can complete a 2-stage crossing out there. So cross one direction at a time. In regards to speed limit signage, we can certainly evaluate this corridor and KK Avenue in general. I would say that, one of the most common requests we do receive is to install some sort of flashing signage with kind of the thought process that more drivers would see it. I guess we in DPW, we haven't really done a whole lot of that historically. We've done a few test locations. We haven't really seen as good of results as we would hope to see for a flashing speed limit sign. A couple locations that come to mind is along West Burleigh Street by one of the high schools, along with 76th Street near a high school. I think we saw a real a short reduction in speed after the signage was installed. But then kind of as the years go by, we haven't really seen much of a statistically significant speed reduction out there. So yeah, we try to reserve the use of flashing signage for conditions that are not readily apparent to drivers. Actually, nearby in this corridor here, one of the railroad bridges, the infamous KK Can Crusher, or whatever it's referred to, that was a location where we felt that, that was a condition that was, we've had routine problems with trucks, running into the bridge because it's a low clearance there. So that's really kind of a situation we felt that needs, more attention drawn to it. So that's where the flashing signage hopefully is making things a little bit better out there. I don't think I've seen any recent incidents out there. I could be terribly wrong on that, but
It's been a while.
yeah, so that's, generally we just don't see as good of results with flashing signs that folks would, and myself would hope to see, so.
Thanks.
Mitch, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Scott, my concern is the priority setting, or what I'm hearing is the priority at DPW, at least as it referred to this stretch. So I know we got little roadway to work with here. We got competing priorities, but you said when I first walked in, you said they were concerned you said this was a temporary solution in the past. When we removed the parking set, this was a test solution. We want to hear feedback, and the feedback we heard were concerned from property owners, and we had negative feedback. But just in this meeting, you got a lot of positive feedback from people who are not the property owner. I'm guessing just this one property owner, the two property owners of those buildings right there. But you've heard a lot of positive feedback, and you have these other concerns. So when it came down to making a choice, which concerns to address, it was the concerns with this property owner, so you could get 3 or 4 parking spots. But everybody else, everybody who bikes and has to cross here and cross, out of the KK trail and can't see around the cars. Now we've all been negatively affected. So that's the negative concern. Given that this is a priority bike connection throughout the city from the south side, it concerns me that that was the choice that was made. Now, I'm guessing in the future, this won't be a problem. You guys are going to do the right thing in the future and we'll figure this out. But what I'm hearing is, in the interim, you bikers, sorry, but we got to get these people their parking. And that's a concern. I think that defies the intent of complete streets policy that you guys are supposed to be following. I don't think it helps us get where the mayor and his administration are trying to get us to. It's 50 miles protected bike lanes. Like, this thinking does not, give me great confidence that DPW has gotten the message that bikers, pedestrians, people taking transit are the priority.
Scott, but to me in this area, because I do live there, and as an engineer, I'm looking at it right now going, we probably put in the best solution we possibly could, especially for the money we have to do it. When we just made it no parking out there, people still park there regardless. They'll take the sign, they'll throw it in the trash, they'll do whatever the hell they want. And that's only because there's just too much pavement out there, and it's uninterrupted pavement. And for us to go in and be like, let's change the whole thing of the roadway with a temporary solution, it doesn't make fiscal sense. It makes more sense to come back in like 5 to 10 years and redo the whole roadway configuration at that point. And I agree with you, like, that right now we are kind of like putting the biker off to the side a little bit, but with the pavement out there the way it is, it's hard to tell a truck, especially, like, don't ride over a temporary curb or whatever. He's just going to do it. He's not going to care. He doesn't care about you and your bike in the first place. But, that's the way I see it from an engineering standpoint. Like, we did a really good job with what we got. The paint out there, for me, like, that was a good help because so many people just ignore lanes anyway, or trying to get close to the median or to the center line. People don't drive that way. They drive as far to the right as they can. And as long as there's a line over there, they won't drive all the way far to the right, most of them.
I was also trying to see if I had a picture of this, but I think immediately after those temporary no parking signs went up, I saw people parking on the sidewalk. Yeah. So I think there's like a compromise that needs to be made, that some parking should be provided. Otherwise, if you don't provide the parking, like Steven said, people are gonna park illegally, and we don't have the resources to be sending out parking checkers to go there all the time.
Yeah, I guess I would add, yeah, point well taken. I understand that this isn't an ideal solution. Again, this was intended to be very temporary in nature. Right now, we are only providing, 80 feet of parking as opposed to the previous about 330 feet, I think was the entire segment. We did, the parking we are providing, it is a solid 250 feet south of the intersection. So we felt that there was adequate visibility within that 250 foot gap where, drivers can see pedestrians that may be intending to cross the street. The parking is far enough down the block right now where we didn't feel that if there were any large trucks parked out there, that it would create like a visibility issue for cross traffic. So yeah, again, I understand, that this is not ideal, but this was really intended to be just a temporary solution until we could, do this right here in the future. So.
Thanks. I think I saw that Kevin Muse raised his hand. I'm not sure if he wanted to speak quickly.
I don't have much to add. Between Steve and Scott, they basically made my points, but just acknowledge what you said, Montavious. We certainly try to meet those ideals, and I think the key for me in being okay with this solution as a temporary solution was exactly what Scott just said, which is that it pulls the parking back far enough from the intersection that the visibility concern crossing Maple there is much less of a concern than it was in the previous situation. As Kate said, allowing hopefully space for people to comply with the parking regulations in the area. But certainly acknowledge what you said, Montavious. We recognize that, particularly if you're heading north-south on KK in this stretch, that this is not an ideal solution. But we do think it's a okay, inexpensive solution for crossing Maple or crossing KK at Maple in this location.
There was a question in the chat about how temporary this is. I think I've heard that this stretch is up for reconstruction because this is technically a state highway, if I recall. And so it's on some schedule in the next 5-ish, 10 years. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think there's a major project coming to the north. I'm not entirely sure if this segment is included.
I think it's just to the north.
Okay.
I can't remember where it
I
started.
think we're trying to look at extending it through the intersection, so.
Okay.
But
Yeah. The state's only committed to Lapham to the north.
Yeah.
We're in discussions about this segment. So.
Thank you. Ben?
Mitch, it's Jake. Can I raise my hand again?
Ben, do you mind if Jake speaks?
No, yeah, go for it.
Sorry,
Go
guys.
ahead,
I'm on the phone. It's hard to tell what's going on in the room there.
Okay.
Also, I'm getting some notes that people are waiting in the waiting room. So if you can just check that, make sure people are in.
I don't see anybody.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Someone was messaging me that. Anyway, yeah, a lot of the points I think were great, especially Montavious. Thank you for that. I want just, I guess my point to add, I don't know how many people in this call were in the room or involved in the fight or the discussion around, bikes on the Hone and essentially, packing rooms and saying, we want this to happen. And then, all the powers that be that said, we're not going to do this. We're going to give you an on-street path. And now it's like 12 years later, and this is still not improved. The fact that the city has been so slow to act on this and that we have to have going on 45 minutes of talk about a 2-block connection, I think is very sad. And it should have been prioritized day one that the city said, we're going to give you an on-street connection from the south. And so I think that's part of the frustration that we've seen here is that they just continue to not care about this section that is a very important southern connection. And that the frustration is, again, the city has taken this long to paint a few lines. And so you know, again, that's just extremely frustrating. And I understand there's a lot of other things at play, but for the city, again, to just say, hey, we're going to give you an on-street connection, and 12 years later, we still have kind of a half-assed solution prioritizing, you know, vehicle parking here is just very frustrating to see. I hope that we can do better in that time frame, especially at a situation where the city is saying we're going to give you this, but we aren't. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake. Were there any other or any committee members that wanted to speak, Ben?
Yeah, even, you know, in lieu of a crosswalk or a median or a traffic island or any of these other important ideas and elements, I just want to point out and remind everyone there's not even a trail crossing sign there or a trailhead sign at that intersection. There's no indication to drivers that I've noticed, northbound or southbound, that there is a trailhead there, let alone that people are trying to cross the street. So like, I'm not generally in favor of rapid flashing beacons because I think they're only a compromise solution in a lot of cases, but this should be that case. This should be that compromise for, I think, for a flashing beacon that even tells drivers that there is a crossing there. That would be vitally important. I don't know if this is something that DPW and the city can do unilaterally, or if this is something that WISDOT has to be involved with, but in any case, it would be a really valuable addition in the meantime.
Does the KKRT Connections have any plans for signage? I want to say there was for that intersection. I can't remember if it was flashing or not, but.
Yeah, not flashing. We do have a wayfinding sign plan that will go in with as it's being constructed, the improvements. So signage will improve there.
Can there be some sort of crossing in the meantime before the formal project?
Yeah, and these are great comments, and this is exactly what I was looking for. And I would tend to agree that this is a location where a pedestrian bike crossing sign, you know, the fluorescent yellow-green signs that you see throughout the city. I think that would be a good improvement here. So yeah, again, that's 100% local control here. We at the city control that. We don't need any kind of state approval. So yeah, I agree that could be a good solution out here.
Awesome. That's great news. Thank you.
I know we have had a lot of discussion on this one item, but I think to put something of a finer point, like this has been a critical connection, and I think to me, I hope that this is something that we can hopefully avoid in the future, to find these like kind of low hanging fruit type things and fix them quicker than we've seen in this case. But I am very glad to have it now. But we do have the letter that I think we should still vote on, but I wanted to open it up to the public. Again, if there's anybody, otherwise you can drop a comment in the chat or raise your hand. Otherwise, we should probably keep moving through the agenda. Hey, yeah, if you could keep your comments brief, sorry, but please.
If we're talking about long run, could we in the future, could we also talk about acquiring the right of way from the former C and NW, so that we can get a bridge over the river and over all these streets to connect to the southern KK? If we're going to talk 5 to 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly forward that along to relevant staff to the city. I'm not by any means a real estate expert, but I would think, I've not been involved in any right-of-way acquisition of a railroad property before.
Railroads don't like giving anything up to anybody, so. 10 to 15 years sounds very, very short or something like that. That's like a 25-year thing, just because of the railroad.
Yeah, I mean, again, all things can be on the table, of course, but yeah, I don't want to give any kind of false hope like that's an easy thing to do.
Railroad doesn't exist anymore. We already own, I mean, we own most of it, and the other part is owned by like a boat company where they store boats.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
just to clarify, in this area, sorry, this is Kevin Muse. The city owns what's north of the river. It hasn't been, and again, obviously this precedes my time at the city and frankly, many of the people's in the room's time at the city, but the land that was given up was the land south of Beecher. And that's now integrated into the development that's planning to move forward there. There's the stretch between Beecher and KK River. That is owned by another entity. But then the land that's north of the river is owned by the city. It wasn't, so there's not a continuous set of right of way or land available to extend the trail all the way south where it currently ends at Lincoln, which is what the KK River Trail Connections Project is working on, is doing that on-street connection. The reason there isn't a diversion, so to speak, up behind the two parcels made up of three buildings, is I think primarily just because of the cost of the elevation change that would be necessary right there. We basically have to remove that wall and make Canadian Pacific, who owns the rail tracks right there, whole to get the bike trail up for kind of that short cut behind. And obviously that also reduces the ability in the future to build some sort of bridge over the Kinnickinnick Avenue if we are to acquire the land south of the river at any point. So just to clarify, so we do actually own the land in this area, but
Kevin,
it's more about
you mean
long-term versus short-term.
You
I think
meant
this is kind of
the area
sorry.
around Anderson Avenue, right?
Sorry, say that again.
Sorry, the land that you're referring to is the land behind and around Anderson Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes, and
Okay.
also the stretch behind these three businesses, between the railroad tracks and the back of the three businesses that are east of KK
Great.
is also
Thank
owned by
you
the
for-
city. Yep.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think unless committee members have questions or comments, I would entertain any motion related to the letter. I think for me to kind of summarize, I am grateful for the improvements that we have seen, even if it took longer than a lot of us would have liked. The trail or the path, the route to the trail and off the trail today is much better than it was a year ago. I appreciate both Alderman Perez and Alderwoman Dimitrievich. I think we're supportive of this as well, in getting both of those done, and for DPW for making it happen. I think the issue is kind of with the priority and compromise. I understand there's always going to be competing interests. In this case, the business got their parking, cyclists got their lane. It wasn't ideal, I think, for cyclists. I hope in the future we can do it better. And so I think that's what this letter is going to get at, is that if we do have the opportunity in the either near or far future to kind of rethink this, maybe based on how it goes over the, next number of months or years, to kind of make this a clear path for cyclists. Is anybody on the committee that has feelings on whether we should submit this?
I'd move for approval to submit the letter.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Montavious and Ben. Any objections? Hearing no objections, we will submit it. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you taking the time this morning and the time for the past number of months working on this, and to Kevin Muse as well, and for everybody else that kind of provided input on this. I really appreciate it. with that said, I know we spent a lot of time on that, so I would like to keep moving through the agenda. But thank you again, everybody. So let's see, next item that I guess we can kind of combine them. We had a discussion on daylighting, which I think we can roll into work group updates. I think targeted improvements didn't meet, so I don't think we have any updates there. Policy. Did you all get a chance to meet on daylighting or otherwise?
No, the only thing would be Lania's email that she sent this morning, that she sent over the daylighting word verbiage and everything like that. So, without her, I think it's just we would have like one voting member in that committee right now, so a little short staffed for that, but
yeah, I think we will come back to Alina sent an email that I think is a resignation, but you can circle back. Did the projects working group have anything to report? I forget who is on that. I'm sorry. Is that a no?
No.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, so I think Alina sent an email this morning. So we have another vacancy for a voting member to fill. So we'll restart that process. If anybody has any candidates, I forget which chair or who nominated Alina, but we'll have to work with whoever it is now to figure that out.
Well, Mitch, what we could do is we can pull out our application list when we were creating the committee. We had a list of people who submitted. We could re-engage those people and see who's still interested.
Yeah, we did get some more people that applied to fill Larissa's spot on the committee as well. So I think we do have some people to draw on, fortunately. It looks like Alina was nominated by the mayor, so the mayor will have to be the person that nominates her replacement. So we'll have to work with mayor's office to figure that one out. But I will take the administrative responsibilities on that one. So the other item was our end of year reporting, which was, if we're okay to move on from that. No comments. No, sounds good. The end of year reporting was the last item on the agenda, or outside of our kind of normal agenda items. And this was in the enabling legislation. We have to provide, I think it said, a written report to the Common Council on what we did for the year. I don't know what form that usually takes.
I can help out with that. This is Kathy. Generally, I mean, what you can do is it can be as simple as a one-page report saying the committee met this many times on this dates. You could provide a list of like the support letters that that we've sent out. It's just kind of a summary. It doesn't have to be a great, doesn't have to be war and peace or anything. Just kind of a summary of what the committee did for the year. Maybe saying that it could detail some of like the organizational things that the committee was divided into work groups that we were, met monthly or whatever. it can be kind of like a high level sort of thing. It doesn't have to be like super nitty gritty. Because theoretically, all of the minutes and all of those things should have been in like the ongoing communication file throughout the year. And so it's just depending on how you guys want to work it, you can ask to have an appearance at a committee, probably public safety, or you can just submit it to the city clerk and it will be added as part of the record. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, like I can just email a PDF to clerk at Milwaukee, or city clerk at Milwaukee.gov.
right, and then it's at the next council meeting, it will be listed as, this file communication received from the Bike Ped Task Force, and it will be ordered on file. But if you did want to appear like before, maybe like in public safety, you can make a little spiel saying, hey, this is what we did, and then just submit that formally.
And I would reach out at Alderman Spiker is the chair, is that right, of public safety and health?
Kathy, is there a due date, so to speak, for submission of this letter?
Nearest to the end of the year, or,
Okay, like,
I mean,
soon.
it's supposed to be a year-end report, so theoretically you should submit it before the end of the year, because you might theoretically do some stuff, but in the early part of the year, within the first quarter.
Oh, okay.
Say would be reasonable. And again, it's not like someone's going to be chasing the committee down looking for it.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, yes, we should have, I think we used to have someone who did that sort of thing, but, we don't have the staff for that anymore, so we really do kind of rely. We kind of rely on the bodies themselves to provide the reporting that they're supposed to be. But yeah, as long as, in the first couple months of January would be appropriate.
Cool. I think I am comfortable kind of at least starting a draft of something. But obviously if anybody on the committee has things they want highlighted, let me know. I think there's a lot of neat things that happened at committee meetings this year and things that came out of them. So I may miss something. And definitely, I guess DPW too, I think, can have input on like whether there was something that we did that was helpful for them. So if that did happen, feel free to send me an email.
Sounds good.
Or members of the public too. Any other thoughts on year-end reporting? This will, I think, will be our first attempt. I think ideally we would get at least peer before public safety and health if they would have it. I think it would be kind of fun. Maybe that's me.
Actually, I think it would be a good idea to go before a committee just to get this committee out there in the public, and the more awareness there is of this committee, the more effective it can be. The more people will turn to it as a resource. If you're just kind of doing your own little thing in your own little box, it's harder to be effective. So the more you can get yourself out there and have people aware of you, I think the better off the committee will be.
Yeah, absolutely in agreement. All right. I think so. That all sounds good to me. We'll plan on doing that. Is there anything that anybody on the committee wanted to discuss before we move into kind of end of meeting things like new business and events and announcements? Hearing nothing, I think we can move into new business with some stuff that we will take up at the next meeting. One of those being officer elections, 2024 plans or goals, both which are specified in the bylaws. Maybe we'll have an update on replacing Alina. I'll add it to my notes for new business for next time, but it can take a while, so I'm not sure that we'll have one by then. Was there anything else in new business that we wanted to discuss next month?
Do you want to review your year-end report so that you can make sure you move it forward?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. We'll hopefully have a draft of the 2023 year-end report prepared to hopefully to submit to the clerk, see if we can get in front of the Public Safety and Health Committee to talk about it. Anything else that anybody would like to discuss at next month's meeting?
I'm hopeful that targeted improvements will have a couple things that we can discuss. Which I know that you were part of the email with Ben and Kathy and I, where we're gonna hopefully meet next week. And I think just hearing little bits that we got a couple other things we'd like to try out. So yeah, I think I'm just bringing this up because I know when I have something on an agenda and a deadline, I work faster and better. But yeah, so maybe a discussion of some new improvements.
Well, I'm happy to oblige and have the expectation that targeted improvements will have something to report next month.
Good. All right.
In the notes.
Yeah. Get ready. It's going to be huge.
Anybody else? Hearing nothing else, events and announcements. So I guess we'll start with committee members and DPW staff or any staff the city. If you have events that are coming up that are relevant to pedestrians and cyclists, now's the time to share them. I guess I can start. We have our monthly bike ride last Friday of the month, which is next week, Friday, 6 p.m. Red Arrow Park. Not sure where we'll be ending yet, but we will be leaving from Red Arrow Park.
Sorry, Mitch, next Friday or 2 Fridays from now?
Shoot, how many Fridays are left? Sorry, it would be 2 Fridays from now.
Okay.
December 29th. Thank you.
Thank you.
A 5 Friday month. Any other events or announcements? It looks like Anna left, but shoot. There is a holiday bike ride tomorrow. The time
4 p.m. in Cathedral Square. They'll go around and check out all the holiday lights in the area. So that's tomorrow. I believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
It's in urban Milwaukee, so if you want to look that up.
That's right. Thought I could find it. But yes, that's tomorrow. I guess there's probably not that many events going on in the middle of December. But does anybody else have anything they wanted to
There was a last night actually there was a get together at Amorphic Brewing in River West that was hosted by the Bike Lane Uprising folks who came all the way up out of their urban mecca to little old Milwaukee to hang out with some Milwaukee people. I'm only bringing this up because it sounds like this is a lot of people had a lot of fun, and we can expect them to be reaching out and coming back again. You might also notice some Bike Lane Uprising signs that have been posted recently in bike shops and libraries. So you can go to your library branch for more information or go online. And I think we'll be seeing them again through 2024 for some events and group rides and bike light giveaways for people who are riding around without any lights. So I'm sorry, this is only abstractly forthcoming, upcoming, but it's not nothing.
We can look forward to them probably next year. Or the urban mecca you referenced being Chicago, I think is where.
Yeah. They're Chicago based. I think this was their first time coming to Milwaukee, unfortunately, or fortunately.
I did find the details on the holiday bike ride. Starts at 3, rolls out at 4 from Cathedral Square. Wheel and Sprocket will be there providing goodie bags, and River West Co-op will be sponsoring hot chocolate. And we'll go ride around and see all of the holiday lights in the city parks, the county parks.
Sponsoring hot chocolate or giving out hot chocolate?
Says sponsoring.
All right.
Various priorities.
I said this last meeting, and I don't want to take up precious bandwidth here of our time, but I do want to say it again just because I've been riding it pretty much every day, and just for further inspiration on good things happening and such. If you haven't yet, check out those protected bike lanes on the west side that connect where Valete meets Martin Drive, and then Martin Drive goes into Highland. Because I biked that area so much over these last 10-ish years, and just the absolute, like, not like I can't even say like peace of mind that one has now biking past Miller and Harley and turning around the bend onto Martin Drive, just because of the way it's all structured out. And yes, there's still cars that are figuring it out and parking in what's now the bike lane. But yeah, for those who haven't seen that, yeah, definitely bike those few blocks, because that's just a phenomenal improvement. Looking forward to seeing more with the connections there to Washington Park and then further east on Highland. But yeah, just a great thing that's happening there.
It's Highland between what streets? Does anybody
So
know
this is Highland and Martin Drive essentially. So like 35th
It's
and
all Highland.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is all. Oh, you're right. Thank
So
you.
from
I should know
Valete to
this.
35th.
Yeah, Highland from Valete to 35th. Thank you, Kate.
Yep.
And that goes into Washington Park, right?
Yeah. The actual buffered protected bike lanes with the ballast and concrete only go up to Valete, but there's still some great improvements on the Washington Park area too. What is that now called? Olmsted Way? Yeah.
There's a little protected intersection there too, Kate. So we did open up our first section in the city this week, guys. So if you guys haven't seen it, 6th and Walnut, it's the first protected bike protected intersection. I think they still have to put some green paint out there, but that whole stretch of Walnut now from like 2nd or something all the way out to 20th is all protected or off street now.
Yeah, there
Great
will
work,
be bus
everyone.
bulbs as
Thank
part
you
of
for that.
the Highland one as well.
I rode there last night. It was fantastic. Yeah, and echoing Barry, yeah, well done. Congratulations and thank you, and great work.
Yeah, I guess this is the end of the meeting. So I think it is a good time to reflect. The city has seen a lot of great improvements, I think, for cyclists and pedestrians. The Walnut project especially is hopefully a model that we will see more of. And I appreciate DPW in the city kind of the first of its kind for us, at least around here. So I'm excited. And I appreciate it.
I see Kate had mentioned Galena. If you haven't checked out Galena from 40th to 35th, that's probably like the most traffic calming we have on the street. It's a lot. And recently repaved too, so. A good option. And with another project, we're extending the traffic calming to Tiefenthaler Park. So that will be potentially a new bike boulevard.
Will that be a formalized bike boulevard or informal traffic calmed?
Not
de facto
decided
bike
yet.
boulevard?
I think we've talked about it being a formal bike boulevard. It's not identified in any plans anywhere, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. And it has really great park connections because from Tiefenthaler, you can make an easy connection to
Right.
King Park. Like if you either on Galena or Cherry. So that's what we've talked about, just kind of informally, internally.
Thank you very much. I had some questions about that from folks I know who were curious.
Excellent. Any other events or announcements from committee members or members of the public? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I will entertain a second.
Well, somebody still has to second though.
Oh, dang, second. All right.
Thank you, Montavious and Barry. And thank you, everybody. A great year. I look forward to next year. Have a great weekend. Have great holidays. Appreciate everybody taking the time to come to this meeting. Thank you. I'll see you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.